She thought she had saved a dying stranger from a storm, but the truth was, she had just pulled one of the most dangerous men in the country into her home, and nothing in her quiet life would ever be the same again. The storm had rolled in fast that night, the kind that swallowed the sky whole and turned the world into noise. Rain hammering the roof, wind clawing at the windows, branches scraping like fingernails across glass. Clara had been halfway through washing a mug when the lights flickered, steadied, then dimmed just enough to make the shadows in her small countryside home feel longer than they should. She lived alone, far enough from town that most people forgot the road even existed, and she preferred it that way. Quiet wasn't just comfort to her. It was protection, distance from everything she'd deliberately left behind. That's why the knock didn't feel real at first. 3 sharp hits against the door, too deliberate to be the wind, too sudden to belong out here. She froze, water still running over her hands, listening hard as her pulse climbed into her throat. No one came here. No deliveries, no neighbors, no lost travelers. Another knock came, weaker this time, followed by the dull sound of something, or someone, leaning against the wood. Clara shut off the tap slowly, wiping her hands on a towel as she moved toward the door, every instinct warning her to stay back, to ignore it, to let whatever was outside remain outside. Instead, she reached for the old baseball bat she kept propped beside the frame, fingers tightening around the handle as she stepped closer. "Who is it?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. No answer, just the storm and a faint, uneven breathing she wasn't sure she imagined. The silence stretched long enough to make her question everything, but then came a soft thud, like weight giving out completely. That was it. That was the moment her decision was made. She unlocked the door and pulled it open just enough to see, and the man collapsed forward instantly, his body heavy and unresponsive as it slammed into her arms. He was soaked through, rainwater and something darker mixing on his clothes, and when she shifted her grip, her hand came away warm and slick. Blood. A lot of it. Hey, stay with me," she muttered, panic sharpening her movements as she struggled to drag him fully inside before the storm swallowed them both. Kicking the door shut behind her, she lowered him onto the floor and pushed his jacket aside, her breath catching as she saw the wound. Clean, precise, and absolutely not the result of any accident she could explain away. Gunshot. Her eyes flicked to his face. Strong features, stubble shadowing his jaw, lips pale, but set like even unconsciousness hadn't taken all his control. This wasn't a random victim. This was someone who had been shot on purpose. For a split second, Clara considered calling for help. Ambulance, police, anyone. But the thought died as quickly as it came. People who ended up like this didn't bring simple explanations, and she had spent too long building a life where complications didn't reach her door. She should have walked away, closed the door, pretended she never saw him. Instead, she exhaled sharply and moved. "You're not dying on my floor," she said under her breath, more to steady herself than anything else. Getting him onto the couch took more effort than she expected. He was heavy, solid, the kind of weight that came from strength, not softness, and every movement drew another quiet groan from him that made her work faster. She grabbed her old medical kit, the one she hadn't touched in years, and forced her hands to stay steady as she cut through the fabric of his shirt. The wound was worse up close, the bullet having passed clean through, but leaving damage that could easily turn fatal if she hesitated. Okay, she whispered, slipping into a focus she hadn't used in a long time, the world narrowing down to pressure, gauze, stitching, keeping him breathing. Time blurred. After that, minutes folding into hours, the storm outside rising and falling while inside. She worked through exhaustion, fear, and the creeping realization that she had just tied her fate to a man she knew nothing about. At some point, she dragged a chair beside the couch and sat, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like it mattered more than it should. Morning came gray and quiet, the storm finally broken, but he didn't wake. Neither did he the next day. Clara moved through her house like she was living someone else's life, checking his temperature, changing bandages, forcing small amounts of water past his lips when he stirred just enough. She didn't ask questions, didn't let herself imagine who he might be or what kind of trouble followed him. It was easier that way. Safer. But on the third morning, everything shifted. She was adjusting the bandage at his side when his hand shot up and caught her wrist. Fast, precise, strong enough to stop her completely. Clara froze, her breath catching as his eyes opened, dark and sharp and instantly aware in a way that sent a chill straight through her. There was no confusion in them, no weakness, just calculation. He released her slowly, but not before making it clear he could have done much worse. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough but controlled, like even pain didn't get to dictate how he spoke. Clara pulled her hand back, forcing herself not to step away. "My house," she said. "You were bleeding out on my porch." His gaze stayed on her, studying, measuring, taking in every detail like he was filing it away for later. "You shouldn't have helped me." The words weren't a warning. They were a fact. Clara let out a small breath, crossing her arms as she met his stare. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I'm starting to get that feeling." For a moment, neither of them moved, the silence stretching between stranger and savior, between two lives that had no business crossing. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression, not softness, not quite, but something close enough to make her notice. The corner of his mouth lifted just slightly. "Too late now," he murmured. And somehow, the way he said it made Clara realize something she hadn't fully understood until that exact second. Whatever world this man belonged to, whatever had put a bullet through him and brought him to her door in the middle of a storm, it wasn't something that ended easily. And by opening that door, she hadn't just saved him. She had stepped into it. She thought nursing him back to health was the hardest part, but the real danger began the moment he no longer needed her. The man who woke in her home called himself Daniel, and Clara knew it wasn't his real name. But she didn't press him. Something about him made questions feel unsafe, like answers would pull her deeper into something she didn't understand. Over the next few days, he recovered with unnatural speed, moving with quiet control, speaking only when necessary, always watching, doors, windows, shadows, as if danger wasn't a possibility but a certainty. Even when he rested, he never seemed relaxed, like his body refused to forget the world he came from. And yet, he didn't leave. He stayed, fixing small things around the house, reinforcing locks, doing things that felt out of place for a man like him. Clara told herself it was temporary, that once he was fully healed, he would disappear and her life would return to normal. But deep down, she knew something had already changed. The shift came that night. Clara noticed the headlights first, multiple beams cutting through the darkness, moving in slow, deliberate formation up the isolated road to her house. Her chest tightened instantly. No one came here. No one even knew this place existed. "Daniel," she called quietly. He was already at the window, standing perfectly still, his expression unreadable as the vehicles came to a stop outside. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Not rushed, not chaotic, calm, precise, controlled. Clara took a step back, her voice dropping. "Do you know them?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he exhaled softly, almost like acceptance. "Yeah," he said. "I do." Something in his tone made her stomach drop. There was no fear in it, no panic, just certainty. A knock followed, firm, confident, nothing like the desperate one from the night she found him. Clara didn't move, but Daniel did. He walked to the door and opened it without hesitation. The men outside didn't rush in. They didn't raise weapons. Instead, one of them stepped forward and lowered his head slightly. "Boss," he said. The word hit Clara like a shockwave. "Boss." She looked at Daniel, really looked, and suddenly everything made sense. The wound, the silence, the control. He wasn't hiding from danger. He was the source of it. "You're not just running from someone," she whispered, her voice unsteady now. He turned back to her, his expression calm, unreadable. "No," he said. A brief pause. "I'm the one people run from." The room felt smaller, heavier, like the air had changed. Clara's heart pounded as the reality settled in. She hadn't just saved a wounded stranger. She had brought something powerful, something dangerous, into her home. "Who are you?" she asked, needing the truth even if it terrified her. He held her gaze. No hesitation left, no reason to hide. "The kind of man," he said evenly, "you don't get involved with and walk away from." Outside, the men waited in silence, ready for his command. Inside, Clara realized something that made her chest tighten. Her life wasn't going back to normal. Not after this. Not after him. She thought the worst part was over once she knew the truth. But the real weight came with what she had to choose next. The house felt different now, like it no longer belonged to her, but to the world that had followed him to her door. The men moved with quiet efficiency, checking exits, scanning the perimeter, waiting for orders that came from him and him alone. Clara stood near the doorway, watching as the man she had nursed back to life slipped fully into who he really was: calm, commanding, untouchable. There was no trace of the wounded stranger left, only power. Before stepping outside, he turned back to her, his eyes locking onto hers with the same intensity that had unsettled her from the start. "You saved my life," he said. She swallowed, unsure what that meant coming from someone like him. "So I'm giving you a choice." The word choice felt strange, almost unreal. "You walk away," he continued, "and I make sure no one ever comes near you again. Your life goes back to what it was." Clara glanced around her home, the quiet, the isolation, the safety she had built so carefully. Then she looked back at him. "And the other option?" she asked. A brief pause. "You come with me." Silence filled the space between them. It should have been an easy answer. It should have been obvious. But something inside her had already shifted the moment she opened that door in the storm. "Why me?" she asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. Because he didn't turn away. That was it. No grand speech. No false promises. Just truth. Clara let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of everything she was about to leave behind, and everything she was about to step into. If she stayed, she would be safe, but small, invisible, untouched by anything beyond her quiet world. If she left, she would be stepping into something dangerous, unpredictable, and impossible to walk away from. She met his gaze, steady now despite the fear. "I won't get my old life back, will I?" He shook his head once. No, another pause. Then Clara made her choice. She stepped forward, not running, not hesitating. "Then I want to see what this one looks like," she said. For the first time, something almost like approval crossed his face. He turned, gesturing toward the waiting cars, the men, the world beyond her door. Clara took one last look at the life she had known, then walked past it. And just like that, the woman who once lived in silence disappeared into a world where power spoke louder than words, and the man she saved became the reason she could never go back.